I think when you then, technology is not a daunting task. It's nothing to do with the generations. It has, nothing to do with what happened in social media. It's evolving times. It's a globalization. Digital technology helped us. I think let us take advantage of it. Unfortunately, sometimes earlier we didn't have data, adequate data. Now we have plenty of data. But we don't know how to use that data to arrive at a decision making. I think so. It's important that you need to leverage this technology to have this efficiency to experience. I think you be efficient and share the experiences which can be very fruitful. To conclude, there are 4 kinds of people. People who do not know what's happening, people to whom things happen, and people who do not, people who do not know what's happening, people to whom things happen, then other cases who makes things happen. And I wish that you are one of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dwarkanath, Judajit and Shelly for sharing your insights on such an important subject. As the session was on, our Prime Minister was addressing on Twitter about the use of technology in e-governance. So we understand how much technology is important, and to do the honors, I'll request our colleague Harish Devarajan to please come to the stage and do the honors by presenting memento first to the session chair, Mr. P. Dwarkanath. Let's hear for the session chair, please. Shelly. Judajit. Thank you indeed, the chair and the panelists. And friends, we will join us for the tea break, which is served outside the hall. Please do join us back sharp at 11:30. The next session will start. So we are here with our session on innovation and next paradigm. As we shared in the previous session, that the session will be moderated by Dr. N.S. Rajan, Group Chief Human Resources Officer and member of the Group Executive Council Tata Sons. And we have our panelist, Mr. Nishant Rao, Country Manager, LinkedIn India, and Mr. Sandeep Bakshi, CEO, ICICI Prudential. And as we also mentioned that just immediately after this session, there is no break. We have a closing session where, you will find the launch of HR Shared Services case study. It's a primary research which is being led by Mr. Harish Devarajan, Leadership Coach and Organization Consultant, People Unlimited. You will be delighted to know, and we are really touched because, as you know, Dr. N.S. Rajan is past president, National HRD Network, and Nishant Rao, who is country manager, LinkedIn India, he is coming directly from US. He landed here this morning, and only for this session he is here today this morning. So grateful thanks to Dr. Rajan, Mr. Sandeep Bakshi, and Nishant Rao. So with this, may I request Dr. N.S. Rajan, the moderator and panelist, Mr. Nishant Rao and Sandeep Bakshi to join us on the stage, and let's put our hands together to welcome the moderator and the panelists, please. Now we hand over the proceedings to Dr. N.S. Rajan, please.
On, right? Very warm good morning to all of you. It's a real pleasure being here with you. You did hear some brief introduction, but I think I'll move to the introduction of the colleagues I have on either side. So in terms of the format, I want to use a slightly different format because you guys are looking a little too serious. So I'm planning to use poetry from the words of Shelley. Where Shelley is around? Not this Shelley, the Victorian Shelley. So I have Nishant Rao with me, CEO of LinkedIn, and Shelley would have actually described him as somebody who has wit and sense, virtue and human knowledge, all that might make this dull world a business of delight, which is LinkedIn. So thank you so much, Nishant, for being with us.
Shelley hasn't met me, obviously. He had such a kind thing to say.
Now here I have a bias, you see. Sandeep Bakshi happens to be a much admired classmate of mine. Both from the girls' side and the boys' side, used to think is really a cool dude. And if I have to use Shelley's words to describe Sandeep, I would say, how may I express his virtues? And I understand that question anyway. They are so great. He is a pearl within an oyster shell. And Dwarka sir will understand this. One of the richest of the deep. Thinks wiser, he says, than ever read in a book, except perhaps in Shakespeare's wisest verses. So such is the distinguished person I have on my right. Both of them CEOs in their own right. When we have a interesting program where we are talking about actually moving from efficiency to experience in the world of HR, shared services and technology, sometimes one wonders whether we have done with the efficiency bit. Because I'm not too sure whether we have conquered that and we're already talking about the next level, the next dimension. But perhaps the best people to actually advise us whether we need to be doing something there are the CEOs on either side. So my first question to you is, how important is innovation and the use of technology when you are driving your talent agenda? So what would you say, Sandeep?
Rajan, I'll start with a very basic thing. When is innovation normally triggered? Normally, I have seen that it gets triggered in many circumstances, but what one has sort of seen innovations get triggered is the following. When somebody says, "Aisa nahi ho sakta," this cannot be done, when fundamentally the situation is required by the society, is good for the customer. That's the time it's possibly an area, where innovation gets triggered. Or when somebody sort of out of fear says that, no, if this happens, the consequences will be disastrous, right? So these are situations when normally it's a trigger for a change to happen or a innovation to happen. See, in my opinion, innovation is, of course, about ideation, about thinking, but is also a lot about culture. And I must tell you, a lot of us today in the matrix-driven setups, we are running quarterly matrix, we are running annual matrix, we are running KPIs. So at times there is absolutely, what should I say, somewhat of what I feel that a lack of congruence between KPIs and innovation. Because, when innovation has to happen, there are a few things which are prerequisites. One, organization should not be thinking hierarchy. Because the thing is that boardrooms are pretty much remote from the customer. Boardrooms many a times stay in very, very, what should I say, protected environments. And to get ideas which are actually going to make a change at the ground from the board or people who are, far senior is being a little too sort of, is not always possible. A lot of innovation happens from the ground. I think it's very, very important for setups to be receptive to any idea which comes at any level. In fact, one of the things that, in our annual conference, we basically had a discussion. We said there is no point in having ideation. The only thing that we should do is any idea, and this is something which one told the legal people, the compliance people, the HR teams, everyone, the regional heads, that if there is a good idea, howsoever sort of odd it may look, howsoever crazy it may look, I think that we must sort of encourage anybody who gives ideas. So this is something, so because ideas will come from the ground and some of these ideas could be transformational. The second thing also is that when we give a task of innovation or something new to somebody or building a new business or building a new sort of area of development, we have to tell the people that you will not be looked at in the conventional KPI manner. For the next 3 years, you are guaranteed safety. Because the moment you give a tough assignment to a person and then dock him at the end on the basis of a KPI, you have given innovation a go by. Then you will just have people looking for safe haven. You must have people wanting to do tough jobs. You must have the ability, the organization must have a culture where people want to do tough jobs and know that failure there is not going to be a write-off of their sort of careers. They will be as competitive or in terms of the positioning vis-a-vis people who are doing what I call conventional safe haven jobs. So this I think is a very, very important. So there is a need which comes from aisa nahi ho sakta and when it is needed. And culturally I think these are the basic requirements for an organization actually to be innovative.
I see agriculture more often than culture in a lot of organizations. But you have an interesting background by virtue of being both a CEO of a running organization and a service provider in the larger world of HR. So if you look at both these lenses, so how important is innovation to you?
Yeah, I think it's critical, and I think the exciting part is just the folks in this room are so critical to making it happen. I'll spend just 2 seconds talking about sort of why I think that's important, and then hopefully we can spend a bunch of conversation on how we bring this to life. So I think there's 2 big shifts that are happening that we all have to grapple with, right? The first is the fact that change is the new constant. That's the only thing that one can rely on. And there's all these different frameworks and methodologies that talk about VUCA and volatile environments and changing environments. But that's the reality, where because of globalization, because of a lot of the shifting dynamics in the industry, that is a given. The second piece is just the whole millennial generation, right? They operate completely differently. What drives them is completely different. If you think about, I can't remember the source of this study, but they talked about how millennials are the first generation where a majority of them rank the purpose that they're working towards almost as high as the pay grade, right? Versus very different from Gen X and obviously very different from baby boomers. So when you have that, in the earlier model where things were pretty constant, you knew once the strategy was set, it was more about execution, and you had a workforce that was ready to execute for you, then these top-down mandates that Sandeep was talking about work well. But now when everything is in flux, things are changing, your employees want more, you have to figure out how to make sure that you create a custom environment of innovation, because frankly, the top, like as Sandeep said, sitting in a board can't actually solve some of these problems. You don't even have, the ideas that are coming in. So it's very, very critical, and, the talent on the team then becomes, the secret sauce. So at LinkedIn, we talk about our culture and our talent as the 2 secret weapons that we use when we go to market. And as a service provider, it's our desire to try and make the part about HR, which is sometimes hard, whether it's big data, whether it's, all of that, that becomes easy. That becomes easy to get. So then, it frees up a lot of the capacity in this room to say, okay, how do I use that in a way that creates, environments which are more innovative? So I'll give you some examples of LinkedIn itself, like LinkedIn in India, a few things of what we have done differently. One is just this whole sort of culture, which is very non-hierarchical. It starts right from the onboarding. I just remember we just hired someone with 15 years of experience in the financial services industry. He's here in Bombay. And I was visiting, and he kept calling me sir, and I was like, no, you have to actually please unlearn some of these habits, because it's really, really important that you see everyone as peers and see yourself as part of this larger team. When you do that, then you will actually come to play for the entire team, not just yourself. So there's a lot of stuff that happens on the culture building side, which I personally, like to make sure that we drive. There's other pieces just in terms of recruitment and the talent acquisition process itself, where, consciously we have interviews that are around culture fit. Consciously, like I'm more interested when I interview someone to find out about their failures and their ability to have self-awareness. And you'll be surprised at how surprising that question is for most people, and they actually struggle with it because we're so used to talking about our successes and our wins, but not as much of our failure. But if the consumer internet has taught us one thing, failure is an asset, right? You fail fast, learn from it, and then kind of it helps you succeed. So I think all of these aspects become very, very important, and who you bring into the organization increasingly matters a lot. So I think the innovation piece is just that is going to be the future for our companies, and figuring that out.
Prashant, interestingly, in 1972, Gilmore and Pine had written a book called The Experience Economy, which essentially we are talking about moving from efficiency to experiences. Their premise was that when you actually start off on commodities and then you move to products, and then you move to higher plane of services, today the world will move towards the world of experiences, and how experiences will define consumer interface at the outside and employee interface on the inside.
Right.
Now, when you look at this element, do you really see a strong play from your end emerging for the HR shared services in terms of creating real experiences?
Yeah, I mean, I actually absolutely think it, and part of our focus, if we start focusing on experiences, I believe the efficiency will happen. You know, it's an outcome because you can get better adoption, better engagement, and so on. So that's really one of the biggest trends that you're seeing is the consumerization of IT in general, right? And HRIT is happening, you know, with the likes of LinkedIn. There's a ton of great startups also innovating in the HRIT space. So if you think about, you know, the technologies you mentioned, like if you think about Snack, right? What is, like if you think social, what it's doing is giving people a voice, just fundamentally, whether it's, you know, on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or wherever you kind of go to, you have a voice. So it gives you the desire and the ability to participate. So when that happens, you know, if you even just take social recruiting as an example, what we're enabling is for all your employees to actually play a role in helping you as HR leaders to actually find the best talent, whether it's things from referrals, things like managing your talent brand and using your employees as the mechanism to actually build you know, your talent brand. There's a startup called Culture Amps, which is allowing you to do pulse checks on a very ongoing basis rather than the once a year review, that pulse review that typically happens. So it just allows for, you know, in real time employees to kind of have these different thoughts and put them out into ether, which gets aggregated. So I think it's definitely happening. Now, in parallel with that, when you have mobile and you have the focus on very streamlined UIs, that's what making engagement possible, right? Because people are thinking very simple apps, simple designs, and that allows for much easier engagement and much better engagement. And you know, you have things like gamification coming in, Top Coder, I'm sure you're all aware of from an engineering talent standpoint, doing some great work around that front. So there are a lot of, you know, I think the tools are there. It's more, I think the biggest shift that I'd like to see is in the mindset of folks, right? And as Sandeep was saying, allowing the teams to actually try stuff and, you know, potentially fail. And the metrics and the measurement that he was mentioning is absolutely critical. So even, for example, for our sales teams, we measure them on 3 aspects: leadership, leverage, and results. And we measure it in that order. Our focus when we have reviews is on leadership and leverage because we believe if you do that, then the results